Okay. Amit, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good noon everyone, and welcome to the Smart Tech for Small Farms webinar organized by the Israeli Export Institute, the Israeli Trade Missions, and Farmers Weekly. My name is Amit Lev. I'm the head of the Israeli Trade Missions in South Africa. The Israeli Trade Mission is a part of the Ministry of Economy in Israel. We are working with all organizations, either in Israel and South Africa, in order to facilitate collaborations between both countries and companies, to facilitate more trade, R&D, investments, and etc. I would like to thank Charmaine, first of all, Charmaine Yeshuvitz, who's leading the agri-tech sector in the trade missions, for this great work. This this webinar is something that we talked about and thought about a lot to how to promote this, because we understand that the farmers and the smallholder farmers, the medium-holder farmers here in South Africa is something that is very, very important. It's crucial to this economy. It's crucial to moving forward this country. And we understand that it's not only the tech, but also the business models, and also the other areas and other measurements that need to be taken in order to take South Africa forward. And if you look on the predictions of South Africa, it's not a bright. But if you look on the agricultural list, I think it's the only sector in South Africa today that is going to grow in more than 5%, even talking about 7, 8, even 10%. So it's pretty amazing, and it's clearly an opportunity. It's clearly something that needs to be done now and need to be forward. And I think that combination with the Israeli technologies that are coming from deep science, from a lot of startups, from a lot of innovative landscape together, it's a great combination. Thank you very much also Moti, our partner from Israel, and the Export Institute for long-time collaborations, and also Denin for the great collaborations and moderating these sessions. We are just now launching a new website for the trade missions, so you can look for us in Israeli Trade Mission to South Africa on Google, and we'll be glad to help you, to connect you to other companies in all sectors. And the people that showed an interest to see the companies, we will do introductions after the webinar. Have a successful and fruitful webinar, and thanks, guys. We can't hear you, Charmaine, you're on mute.
Thank you, Amit. Without further delay, I'll hand over to Deneen Erasmus to begin the discussion. Let's commence. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Deneen Erasmus, the editor for Farmers Weekly. So thank you to the Israeli Trade Mission for involving Farmers Weekly in this webinar. We're very happy to partner with them again. And some really interesting and excellent innovations that we're going to discuss today. Our expert panel consists of Adam Abramson. He's the CEO and founder of Farmster, which is a mobile trading platform for farmers. We've got Eran Pollack, the CEO of NDrip, which has developed a gravity-powered drip irrigation system. And then also Simon Schwal, the CEO of OKO'S, and they've developed a crop insurance product for small-scale farmers to cover weather-related risk. So just to run through how we hope to run the program today, I'll just give a short introduction now, and then we'll go over to each of the members of the panel are going to get about 7 minutes just to introduce their companies and the specific products that we are going to talk about today. Then we'll go into just a general panel discussion session leading into a specific discussion of each of the different products. And then we will have a short time for audience questions, but Charmaine has also been in contact with some of the audience members already. We do want more specific information from some of the companies. So just to get started, as I said, the panel will be discussing their products which they have developed for use by small-scale farmers in Africa, and we're also going to be discussing some of their experiences with developing technology solutions for small-scale farmers. And just to set the scene a bit, in many parts of Africa, small-scale farmers experience large innovation deficits compared with farmers in other parts of the world. For example, if we just look at crop yields, in East Asia, another part of the world where a lot of small-scale farmers participate in the farming sector, yields have increased around 6-fold in the past 40 years. During the same period of time in sub-Saharan Africa, yields have only doubled. And then the agricultural sector in sub-Saharan Africa is also the least mechanized in the world, with farmers here on average having only about 1/10 of the mechanization tools of their peers in other developing regions. And then if we look at some of the challenges which is causing this deficit, it's mostly to do with affordability and, on the other hand, availability. The lack of investment in technology solutions that specifically addresses the need of small-scale farmers in Africa has also been a problem. But I'm sure that some of the products that we are discussing today will speak to that problem. And but this investment deficit also stretches to infrastructure development that is needed to give farmers access to the latest technologies. For example, just if we look at the road infrastructure in South Africa, many farmers need to travel a minimum of 2 kilometers to get to their nearest road. And for many of these farmers, they have to do this on foot. They don't have another type of transportation, which can also make it difficult for them to access their markets and to find new buyers for their products. So that was just a general introduction. I now want to go over to our panel so that they can start speaking about their products. We are going to start with Adam Abramson, who I said earlier is the CEO and founder of Farmster. Adam, if you are ready, you can kick off with your discussion.
Okay. Wonderful. I'm going to share my screen till everyone can see. Give me a thumbs up if you can see. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I'll just go over our solution, and clearly we can go over questions after that. So the main challenge that Farmster addresses is just the generally poor level of information between farmers and buyers tend to not be connected to the internet. They tend to live in very rural areas, so they're very isolated from the markets, from buyers. And what typically happens is there's a lot of effort on the buyer's part, usually middlemen, traders, informal buyers will spend a lot of time and effort looking for produce in small-scale farming environments. And that's also a big pain on their end. 3 to 4 days is typical to find enough produce to then send in a truck, and developed a way for farmers to publish their crops ahead of time without requiring the internet. So this is where sort of the tech part comes in. So in Kenya, we're operating under the brand Farm Kenya. So the way it works is farmers basically use our smart SMS system to answer questions, basic questions about their farm produce. What are you growing? When will you harvest? How much do you expect to harvest? Where do you live? And then basically that information is published to our app for buyers. So buyers use the app, farmers use the SMS, and then it's a way for them to connect. So we don't get involved with logistics. We don't ship and warehouse and distribute. We're just a connection point, right? So it's just a way to increase the visibility and decrease the amount of inefficiency in these value chains. So the process is a farmer will publish by SMS, a buyer will download the app and look for produce, can be livestock, basically anything farmers grow. And it's basically a classified service. So then buyer can call the farmer, they can make a decision if they want to, visit the farm, make a deal. And it's just a way of connecting farmers with buyers, buyers with farmers more efficiently. I'm not going to go through the full demo, but just to go over the main features. So farmers, obviously at this point are just interacting by SMS. So they just get basic message automated chatbot, which is able to read what they're responding. So they'll write their name, their location. They'll answer questions about what they're growing. The last question, when are you going to harvest? And the system has understood and what they've shared. They can then go in and edit, change their listing, report it as being sold. And so it's interactive. And then on the buyer side, the app basically allows buyers to do three things. Search for produce, connect with farmers. They can kind of track farmers as they meet them on the app and kind of add them into their network. And then they can also keep track of their business. Now, again, this is really designed for informal traders. So a big problem that a lot of them have as well is just keeping track of how their business is doing and having that digital footprint eventually for other services like financial services to be able to get a loan for their business, this type of a thing. So we've now partnered in Kenya with a Standard Group, a major media house, and we're doing marketing there at the moment. We've reached 4,000 farmers so far. This is just in the last month, and 600 buyers. So we're really wanting to build this into a much larger platform that can serve as another option, right? So for farmers to connect with buyers and buyers to connect with farmers. There's no obligation, but that's kind of where we are in our journey. And then eventually we will be looking at ways to send messages to our farmers, right? So because we know what they're growing, we have this data, this information, basically in real time about their production. We can then, provide them with, promotions for products that will be useful, most likely will be useful for them specifically, based on what they're growing, based on what stage of the crop, what stage of the season they're in. So it really kind of removes the need for just these bulk SMS approaches. We can really target farmers, and that's what we're calling our farm target tool. We do have an option for engaging with sort of local agents or lead farmers in a community who can also help buyers connect with farmers. In that case, it's just a way buyers can actually discuss the produce with somebody who's been trained and can ensure a certain quality. So this is just another option on our platform. And yes, so this is basically our latest milestone. And yeah, so this is that's Farmster in a nutshell. So I've left my email here. Please reach out if you'd like to discuss more. And yeah, looking forward to the questions and discussion.
Adam, I think let's go straight into a discussion of the product, and then we'll move on to the other companies. So we had one question from the audience that you've already answered now, how many farmsters are on the platform so far. Then we've got a second question here from Mandla Nkomo asking, what does a partnership with your platform entail? Are you looking to go beyond Kenya?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll stop sharing. So basically, we have the technology developed. Our main need is marketing, getting to farmers, getting to buyers, building this platform, building the community around it. What we found to work in Kenya was just having this sort of 360-degree marketing partnership with Standard Group. That's been pretty effective. And so, other types of partners could be, a mobile network, a media house like Farmers Weekly, something like that. Anyone who can help us build this community and reach more users. It's really only as valuable to the users as the other users that are in it, just like any network. So that's really what we're looking for.
Okay, and then we've got a second question here. So obviously, our people are listening wanting to know, you've also sort of covered that now, but the viability of introducing this kind of app in South Africa.
Yeah, so I think in South Africa, there's going to be, like, we've obviously targeted the smaller scale farmers by using the SMS. We want to also add features to be used by farmers as well. We're not there yet, but that's kind of our next step. There's a lot of large farms in South Africa, and it's a bit different from other maybe African economies. But fundamentally, it's a very similar problem. Not really dependent on the size of the farm. Just having more options for connections is always a plus. So we would need to also look at the language itself. If it needs to be translated, right now it's in Swahili and English, the SMS. So we would want to look at that aspect as well. But yeah.
Adam, I just want to know, what has been some of the feedback that you've received from the buyers and sellers that have been using the platform in Kenya so far? Like, what have they really enjoyed about using the app, and what has been sort of some of their concerns with using it?
So I think one of the biggest success stories so far is, like, we were doing a pilot in Tanzania with a group of tomato growers near Iringa, who basically, had grown all together. They'd all grown tomatoes. It was the end of the rainy season, and markets were pretty flooded in that specific area. And we actually introduced the app to a large-scale buyer who was, making tomato paste on a pretty massive scale, and it was actually one of his suppliers with a large truck was able to then connect with these farmers as they were literally sending us photos. One of the photos I shared at the beginning is from that area of them just throwing away the because they could not find buyers for their produce. And so a lot of times there are just fundamental information gaps. That's not going to solve every single case, right? But there are a lot of cases where it's just a matter of finding the right person at the right time. So that's kind of our vision. Certainly there are a wide range of buyers as well, right? So this isn't designed for exporters to Europe with really high quality standards who wouldn't be themselves out going to source from farmers every day. This is more designed for, the middle of the value chain, those types of buyers who, they can create their own, kind of process to vouch for quality or to verify quality. That's one of the reasons we have the agents as well, is to be able to do that. But that's been one of the challenges as well, is how do you know the quality? How do you verify the quality? Yeah. And so you have these different sort of profiles of users. And, that's kind of the journey that we're on, is really, serving those different profiles. Right now, this is more aimed at the informal value chain.
Okay. Is there, as you develop the platform, is there some other functions that will be included, for example, that farmers can use this to access more market information so they can better understand price movements and where the demand really lies, so that might influence their planting decisions and planning decisions?
Right. So one of the features in the app, the business tool, the business tracking tool, is basically meant to help get a sense of what the market is doing as buyers are sharing what they're buying, what the price was. We're meaning to be able to crowdsource that information and then have that information available, that intelligent market intelligence.
Okay.
We're not there yet, but that's something that we've sort of designed into this. So that's one additional service. Another is, in general, farmers, especially small scale farmers, a lot of times they actually just want agronomic advice as well through the season. And so that's one of the things we can also do. Once we know what they're growing and basically when they will harvest, we can then add in sort of weekly messages that are timed to the season and to that crop that can be helpful, that can be customized.
Okay.
So that's another service we're looking at.
I've just got one last question, and then I think we can come back to you later. But I do want to move on. So the one thing I was wondering is whether this platform, can it also be used to sell inputs to farmers? Because I know one of the challenges that small scale farmers often have is accessing the volumes of inputs that they need. So smaller amounts of seed or fertilizer, for example.
Yeah, so that's definitely in the pipeline as well. We once we have the users on the platform, we want to be able to provide them with the inputs, and targeted to their needs. So we are also in process of building a marketplace for inputs. Our vision there is really partnering with the local retailers, who typically don't have a huge selection of inputs. But what we could do is we could actually deliver to those retailers from a much wider range directly from manufacturers, from input companies, this kind of a thing. So that's also in process of development.
Okay, and then just the last two questions here, and they're both from Michael Day, who wants to know if it is possible to customize the app for a specific company who wants to procure from a specific smallholder farming network. And he also wants to know if you've done any rollout or tests in Ethiopia and in Uganda.
Okay, so the first question, yes, it's possible. We could basically build a separate pipeline for those farmers to just be exposed to your company and not to the general population. And it's something we'd be happy to explore. And regarding Ethiopia and Uganda, no, we haven't done any operations there. We've done pilots in Zimbabwe and Tanzania before really looking at launching in Kenya. So that's been our journey so far.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. We'll get back to you a bit later in the discussion. So we're going to move on now to Eran Pollack. He's the CEO of NDrip, which, as I said earlier, the company has developed a really innovative gravity-powered drip irrigation system. So, Eran, if you want to tell the audience more about this.
Sure, love to. I'll use also some presentation. And first of all, thank you, Deneen, for moderating, and thank you, everybody, for organizing this interesting panel. Happy to be here on behalf of NDrip. Just waiting for the presentation. So NDrip is an Israeli-based startup. It was established about 4.5 years ago, operating now around the world, with one very clear mission, and this is to eliminate and to basically replace flood irrigation wherever it exists. As we all know, and especially if you look at the dry places around Africa, the world is running out of water. And it is running out of water in the same time that people need more food. And therefore, there is an issue of how we supply the food that we need with less resources. And in order to do so, we must start with agriculture and we must save water using agriculture. And with this in mind, the fact that today 85% of the world's irrigation is done by flood is more or less crazy. Actually, I don't think we can imagine any other technology that is now using the same methods as it used 5,000 years ago. If you look at the picture here from Egyptian times and the picture right next to it from Arizona last year, the method of irrigation is exactly the same. And this is an amazing effect in my view. And we all know that flood irrigation is extremely inefficient. It is inefficient, first of all, in the usage of water, the level of yield, the optimization of yield level. Fertilizers usage is much higher when you're using flood. And when you go to long-term issues like water contamination, land depletion, it only gets worse. So really, flood irrigation is something that we need to replace, and this is what NRIP is trying to do. This is also something that is now on the scope of all or most of the global multinational companies, from the food industry, agriculture industry, textile industry. Everyone that is committed to sustainability has to deal with water issues, with fertilizers issues, and this is also something that we see and we think that will move things ahead. And this is exactly where NRIP is coming. NRIP has developed a precise irrigation system that works only on gravity, basically replacing or connecting directly to the infrastructure laid by the flood, but providing an irrigation system which is equal to drip in terms of efficiency, almost 90% or 95% efficiency of water. So we achieve the best of two worlds. We achieve the low-cost application of flood because we do not use high capital-intensive infrastructure like pump stations, filtering, and all that comes with it. But we achieve the advantages of drip irrigation and exactly all the advantages that come with it, namely efficiency of water, efficiency of applying fertilizers within the water, and so on. So this is a really breakthrough in terms of irrigation technologies, allowing precise irrigation, but with a saving of almost 80% in cost relative to drip, and saving all the energy, of course, energy expenses. So in a place, and most small farmers have this problem in a place that they do have water coming to the field, but they do not have electricity connection, NRIP will be even better because we do not need any additional energy. How it looks on the field, you can see on this slide. On the left, this is our irrigation system connected straight to the canal in the left picture and straight to the well in the right picture. Again, only gravity. We do not use any additional filtration or pumping station. All the system or our product is fully recyclable. It is all made out of the same polymer. So it's very easy and very cost effective to recycle. The system in its nature is seasonal, which means that once you lay it on the ground, if you take it out of the ground, we do not know if it will work again or not. But as long as you keep it and you maintain maintenance as it needs, it will work and it will provide the needed results. Now we provide this solution together with our decision support system that is based on sensors. Our sensors inserted into the ground that tells you as a farmer exactly when to irrigate, how much to irrigate, how much fertilizers needs to be applied, and all the data that you need to know in order to have best practice and best operational system. Obviously, for a very small farm, not all farmers will use this DSS system, but once the farm is a bit bigger, it is very efficient. NREP today is spread mostly in 3 markets: Australia, the US, and Africa. We have a team in Swaziland with few operations in Swaziland. And we are actually now increasing our activity in Africa based on this team. In the last 6 months, we started marketing a specific product for smallholders. We call it the 1-acre kit that we can see in this picture. The main differentiator in this kit is that we can serve with a starting pressure of no more than ½ a meter. As you can see this, in a second. As you can see this drum here, this is the only place in which we accumulate pressure for the field, and we do not need more than ½ a meter here. All the rest is done by gravity. But with this ½ meter of pressure, we can serve up to 600 meters for the large scale, and for the 1-acre kit, up to 100 meter long of field without any additional pressure. As you may see here, the water is natural water coming, in this case, direct from the river without any filtration. Therefore, the cost is very low. And basically, this is the system, how it looks like. The main uniqueness of NDrip is inside the emitter, the dripper itself. The dripper is a patent that is based on a multidimensional flow of the water. Most drippers around or all drippers around the world that are not NDrip are based on what we call the zigzag mechanism. And the zigzag mechanism is what requires the dripper requires the water to be very clean and come with high pressure. NDrip is the only one that can provide the same result, but with less than 5% of the pressure relative to drip and with natural water. So this is a product. It's a product that we now market in 2 ways. One from here, from Israel, and the other way is from our team in Swaziland. We have now beginning of operations in Uganda and Ethiopia, and obviously in South Africa and Swaziland. Thanks, happy to answer any question.
Thanks for that, Eran. Yeah, I'm going to go. A lot of the questions that I prepared was answered in your presentation, but I just think it's so. Some of the questions that I still had is it possible to install these dripper lines subsurface?
Yes. So our normal practice is that we put it either on surface or between 1 to 4 inches below. It depends mainly on the crop, mainly on the agriculture practice of the farmer, but the possibility is between 0, so on surface, or up to 4 inches below. We should pay attention to the fact that because we do not use any pressure, we cannot install the system and then press it with some kind of cultivation tool. So once you install the system, you cannot go over it with a tractor.
Okay. And then there's also been some questions, you did mention this, but maybe if you can just explain a bit more around the fact that there's no filtration required of the water used.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
how does this affect the lifetime of the system, the longevity of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So no, we do not use any additional filtration. We do use a kind of screen just to prevent fish or large leaves or large algae to get into the system. So there is a screen in the head of the system, but active filtration we do not need. And since this is a situation, the longevity of the system very much depends on two elements. One, how dirty the water is. If the water is extremely dirty, obviously we cannot prove or we cannot promise that it will last more than one year, 12 months. Up to 12 months, it will last for sure.
Okay.
And second, and maybe more important, is how the farmer is operating the system, and if he follows the manuals as we supply them. For each farm, we supply what we call a feed plan. Feed is fertilizers, irrigation, and water treatment, which is dedicated to the specific farmer and tells him exactly how he needs to handle the system in order to achieve the best results.
Okay, and then we've got a few questions here around the cost of the system. So if you can go from sort of the small kit that you've got available for the 1 acre, and then, you know, when it goes up to scale, what's the cost implications then?
Sure. So maybe I'll start from the large-scale farms. So the large-scale farms, you have two components for the system. One is modifying the infrastructure of the farm, which is very much varies. It depends on what you have in the first place. The average is something like $500 per hectare, or $200 per acre. And then you have the laterals, the drip tape. The drip tape, the amount of drip tape is very much depends on what kind of crop you have. If you have a very intense crop like onion or lettuce, the distance between laterals will be very short. If you have cotton or sugarcane, it can go up to 3 meters between laterals. So, and also and here again, the average is something like between $250 to $300 per acre. Now, the 1 acre kit, we designed it to be generic in the sense that it will be good for a variety of crops and variety of scenarios. And the retail price that we currently sell them is about $815 per kit.
Okay.
Now, you have to remember that out of this kit, roughly 50% will serve the farmer for a long time. It's basically infrastructure. It's the tank and some distribution lines. And about 50% will be the tape laterals that will be replaced based, as I said before, on how the farmer will use the system.
And then we've got a few questions about your representatives and suppliers in South Africa. Who are they? And also, do you have an idea of what the lead time is when a farmer orders your irrigation system?
Sure. So first of all, we have a team, our internal team in Swaziland, which is within South Africa. And the team has supply with them, so the lead time is very short on our side. We are actually, as we speak, we are sending another container or more than one to the team there, so they are equipped. In terms of how we distribute across Africa, it is still an ongoing process. We have partners in Uganda, we have partners in Ethiopia, and we have our team in South Africa. Other than that, we are now building the operations.
Can you maybe just supply some contact information for people wanting to get in contact with your representatives in South Africa?
Sure. So I think the best will be to maybe send it later with all the documents from the meeting, but I'll send both our contacts here in the headquarters and the guys in South Africa.
And I just wanted to just get some more clarity. So for the larger scale systems, for that to be effective, does the farm have to have used flood irrigation before switching to the system, or will it connect with other types of irrigation systems that are currently in place?
So what we need is for the field to be leveled in a slope that we can analyze and design the system accordingly. And the thumb rule will say that if the field is currently flooded, we can do it for sure and it's easy to convert. If the field is not currently flooded, we will require a survey that will tell us the slopes of the field, the elevations, if it's undulated or not, and then we can design accordingly. So there are two ways here. If it's currently flooded, it's easy. If it's not currently flooded, we need to look at the parameters in order to decide.
Okay. And for the 1 acre units, that doesn't need to be, there just needs to be some kind of water source nearby that can feed the tank.
It needs to be, we need a water source, and we need the slope to be less than 4%. So a slope which is higher than 4% will be challenging, okay. But no one really uses flood on slopes that are 4% and more.
And then, so just the last question before we move on to the next presentation. And as I said, we will get back to all the speakers after we've gone through all the products. And that's just, so we've got a last question. I don't know. So we've answered this. So it's the field needs to be a slope, so that you said a 4% slope. And
between 0 and 4%. We can do 0, we can do everything between 0 to 4.
And then the last question from my side was just on some feedback of where the systems have been installed, and if you can maybe give an example from a large scale installation on a bigger farm, and also from the smaller scale installations, what type of crop yield increases have you seen and improvements in crop quality?
Sure. So we have about 50 projects around the world in our backlog or track record. More or less 40% in Australia, 40 in the US, and 20% in Africa. Variety from very small ones to 50, 60 acres. This is what we have currently in many places. The results are very much or exactly like you will imagine from drip systems. So if you look at the Australian market, we achieved in some places a yield increase of 35, 40% with a water deduction or water saving of close to 50%. This is more or less the same in the US. In Africa, the yield increase was a bit higher, and the water saving was also higher in some of the places. But in the sense of the agriculture output or the result, it is pretty much the same that you will get from any other or any drip system that provides the best quality irrigation. Okay.
Thanks very much, Eran. We'll get back to you. So let's move on to the final panel presenter today. That's Simon Schwal, the CEO of OKO'S, which has developed a crop insurance product specifically for small-scale farmers to cover weather-related risk. Welcome, Simon, and thanks for joining us. So over to you if you want to just tell the audience about this product.
Sure, thank you very much for having me. So yes, I'm Simon from OKO. I'll bring a deck on screen as well. Okay, this should be visible to all. All right, so I'll try to be short. What we do at OKO is assuring income for those who feed the world. What we mean by that is that we bring crop insurance to smallholder farmers in emerging markets, and we started with West Africa. So without making you wait more, I'll show you a demo on screen. Basically, what we promise is that anyone with a phone can insure their fields against weather risks. We know that smallholder farmers in most parts in Africa don't have smartphones, or if they have smartphones, they don't have necessarily access to internet all the time. So we built a solution that lets them have access to insurance from any device and without having to move to the city, without having to have internet, and without having to have a bank account. So I'll show you a demo, but before we reach to this stage in the demo, I'd have to explain that we have agents that explain how insurance works to farmers, because most of the farmers that we interact with never heard of insurance before. And we collect three things from the farmers, either from a call center or from the field agents. We collect the land size, the crop type, and the location. And based on these three pieces of information, we create a quote that we can send via SMS. So here it's this SMS that you can see. I'm sorry, it's in French because we operate in French-speaking West Africa at the moment. but it says, thank you for your registration. It gives you your client number and the code that you need to dial in order to pay your insurance policy. So that's what we do here. You dial this code on your phone. And once again, it doesn't need to be on a smartphone. It's just easier to see here for the demo. And the menu will pop up on screen where you can have different options. And one of the options is payment, for example, here. So we'll do the payment. You can choose to pay for your own insurance or for a relative. Here I'm paying for myself. So you see your name is recognized and the amount that you need to pay is recognized. You can make small payments because we also know that smallholder farmers don't have a lot of cash in hands. So here we're making a small payment. And then you just need to finish your subscription by typing your PIN. And you are insured for the season against weather risks. So this is using mobile money, which you probably know, all of you in South Africa, things like MTN mobile money or Safaricom M-Pesa. So it's available for anyone who has a phone. You probably know traditional crop insurance. So the reason why crop insurance was not available to smallholder farmers so far is that this traditional crop insurance was not affordable for smallholder farmers. If you think of how traditional crop insurance works, you need to send someone on site to create a quote. Then you need to have a network of agencies to collect the premiums. And finally, you need to send someone on site again at the end of the season to measure the losses and to calculate a claim. So all this manual intervention and expertise takes a lot of money. And this doesn't make sense for an insurance company to invest in this for smallholder farmers who can only pay a few tens of dollars every year. There's also a lack of data that pushes insurance companies to increase the cost of insurance because they're not completely sure of what is the risk they are taking. So we do things differently in order to reduce these costs. We use 4 sets of technologies. First, we use remote weather monitoring. What that means is that we use satellite data. We have 25 years of historical weather data, and we understand for every location what is the frequency of droughts, of floods, of extreme temperatures, of extreme wind. So we know exactly what is the risk that we are insuring. Next, we use mobile payments. So as you saw, we collect premiums and we pay claims using mobile. We use big data analytics to understand how much needs to be paid depending on the weather that we observe. And we use smart contracts. So as soon as some conditions are met, payments is made automatically. So how it looks in the end is like this. Farmers pay a low-cost premium using their phone, and you saw the demo. And then we monitor the weather at their location. There are 2 possible outcomes. Either it's a good season and farmers don't need to receive any compensation, or we identify that in the area there was a lack or excessive rain, for example, in which case we automatically pay an insurance compensation to these farmers. They don't need to wait for an expertise to be done. They don't need to make a claim. We tell them automatically how much they are available, how much they are eligible for. And for the insurance company, there is no risk of fraud because no one can stage a claim or bribe the agents to have a favorable assessment. This is a tool that we use, and this is on the map of Mali where we operate mostly today. So you can see that we can measure the risk based on your location pretty precisely, but in the interest of time, I will go forward. We're not an insurance company, so we need to work with a local insurance company. We've been in discussion with Hollard, for example, in South Africa, especially to enter Swaziland and Lesotho. Yeah, we need to have a local insurance partner to bring this solution. But once we have this, we bring the product, we create the product, we distribute the insurance product to farmers using a network of agents. We collect premiums using mobile phones. We interact with farmers via mobile during the season. We validate the claim and we pay the claims. So the main person interacting with the farmer is an OKO agent or the OKO interface. So far we've launched in Mali and in Uganda. In Mali, we have already more than 1,800 farmers insured with us, and that is in only 3 months. That's with only one product that is for corn producers. So now we are expanding to different crops as well, like rice, sorghum, millet, sesame, and cotton. And what's interesting is that we received 30,000 callback requests, so there is a strong interest from farmers to get this kind of solution. We also work with agro industries. So for example, we work with AB InBev, the largest beer company in the world, and we insure 60% of their barley farmers in Uganda. And we also work with Touton, which is an importer of coffee and cocoa in Africa to also provide insurance to their providers. An important point as well is that we know that smallholder farmers really struggle to have access to loans, to obtain a loan, microloans or loans from financial institutions. So we partner with these institutions to negotiate better rates for farmers who are insured with us. What this means is that a farmer that is insured with us has a lower risk of non-repayment. Therefore, they can benefit from advantageous conditions, such as not having to bring a deposit or guarantor, not having to have 2 years of experience, and so on. There are other solutions that are similar to what we do, but we are unique in the fact that we are universally accessible. All you need to, once we are in the market, all you need to have access to our product is a phone. You don't need to be part of a specific cooperative. You don't need to have taken a loan with a specific microfinance organization. So that's how we differ to competitors. We have been identified as one of the most promising startups in Africa by Orange, by SeedStars. We are supported by the Israel Innovation Authority, and we also have the support of the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, which is the group of all central banks. So it is recognized as a solution that has a positive impact for farmers in terms of financial inclusion. So that's it. It's a little bit about more than 7 minutes, but that's as short as I can do it. Any question?
Simon, thank you for that. I've got quite a few questions. I'm just going to start. One of the questions we've had from the audience is whether you've partnered or spoken with any of the corporate banks in South Africa.
So
across Africa, not in South Africa.
Okay. So we're talking to a few banks. We're talking to Atlantic Bank in West Africa. We've been in discussion with Nedbank and with ABSA in South Africa. So there is some interest from them because they see that they could certainly provide loans to a lot of farmers that were too risky for them before. So we have some discussions with this kind of institutions. Actually, we have Barclays as one of our shareholders, and Barclays, yeah, it's the former name of ABSA, so we can easily work with ABSA, I believe. So this is something we can do. For now, we mostly partnered with microfinance organizations because they were closest to our farmers.
Okay, so I'm going to start with some of my questions that I had. And firstly, does the product that you offer, does it rely on a certain minimum amount of producers in a certain area signing up, or can it just be one smallholder farmer in the whole of a region?
So there are two answers to this. Operationally, technologically speaking, once we are in the market, any farmer individually can subscribe, even if he's alone in his area, because then we distribute the risk with the other farmers in other places. So that's not an issue for us. The only issue, and that's the second part of my answer, is that in order for our model to be sustainable and profitable, we need to have a certain number of farmers in the country where we operate. So when we enter a market, we need to first secure that there will be enough farmers that are interested in our solution, and maybe secure a large group of farmers that want to work with us, so that we can ensure that we can collect enough premiums early on to be sustainable. So today we can, for example, serve an individual farmer in South Africa, but if we enter South Africa because we have a collaboration with a bank, an insurance company, or mobile operator, or maybe just a large agricultural group, then once we are in the market, then anyone can subscribe.
And in terms of how decisions are made in when a payout will happen, what percentage of damage does there have to be before there's a payout? So is it a 10% crop loss or 30% crop loss?
So usually what we do is we cover the more catastrophic risks, because farmers don't have a lot of money that they can spend in insurance. So if we start covering all the small deviation, then it's going to be a very expensive product. It will pay more often, but it will be very expensive. So usually it's around at least 15 to 20% losses, and then we start compensating the farmers.
Okay.
But if needed, we can change this. to suit specific need from a specific industry, for example. But by default, we would look at around 20% loss.
And is your product able to provide coverage for livestock farmers, or is it only for crop farmers for specific short-term weather events?
As of today, it's only for crop. That being said, what we can do, for example, is forage insurance. So if the problem that cattle farmers have is that there's a lack of food for their cattle in the fields, we can possibly insure that as well. But we don't do any other kind of livestock insurance at the moment.
Okay, and I've just got one more question, and then I'm going to go over to some of the audience questions. And that is whether or not, have you had any discussions with any governments about linking this into a type of government or a government-backed and subsidized insurance product for small-scale farmers in specific countries?
Yes, so in Uganda, for example, we work with an institution called AIC. It's a system that is subsidized by the state, where 80% or 50 to 80% of the cost of insurance is paid by the state and by subsidies. So we work in that scheme. So it makes actually our job a lot easier, because then we can offer a much more attractive price to farmers. In Mali, we try to do the same. So if there is an existing scheme, we would try to fit into that scheme to make farmers benefit from the subsidies on insurance. One point that I want to highlight is that in South Africa, we're not completely sure that we can operate because of the regulation. So that if we have in our audience people who are part of the government or who have linkage into the regulators, it would be useful to us to know if this kind of insurance is allowed in South Africa, because from what I understood, there is a bit of a gray area where it might be that insurance requires a local, an on-site expertise, an on-site inspection, sorry. So yeah, that's a caveat that I need to make. Otherwise, yeah, what we're looking for to launch in South Africa is either a large agro industry or agricultural group, or an insurance or mobile operator that is willing to launch this service for their customers.
Okay, so we've got a question here from Jan Greiling, and he asks, what's the resolution of your climate model? Maybe if you can answer that, but also more broadly speak about the software that you use in terms of tracking the weather data.
Yes, so we use publicly available data. That's important to us, one, to keep the cost of the product low, and two, to give transparency, because anyone can check the data and make sure that they can follow the data that we collect as well. So the resolution of the data that we use today is about 4 square kilometers. So it's not down to the parcel level. Usually the plot level the plot size is smaller than this. We're working with farmers that have 1 hectare, around 2.5 acres to 5 acres. So what farmers are explained, what we tell them is, everyone in the same village, in the same commune, will have the same payout. So it's not going to be individual assessment, but if there was a shortage of rain in your area, you will be covered, because everyone, it's very unlikely that you will have a lot more rain than your neighbor or something like this. So yeah, it's we do this at a village level or a commune level, and we have enough resolution for that. The data is about 4 square kilometers. It's a daily data. So that's pretty accurate.
Okay, and another audience member, Thomas Funke, asking more on the data, how it's verified, but then sort of more specifically, do you have your own local weather stations, or do you use NASA data?
Yeah, so we use satellite data. The problem with weather stations is that there are very few of them, at least in the markets where we operate today. But even if we look at Israel, there are only maybe 4 connected weather stations. So it doesn't give us the granularity that we need. If there is a network of weather stations and connected weather stations in your area, then we can use that, and it can improve the resolution. But by default, we use satellite data. So that's how we verify the risk. And I see that the question also includes, how is the premium determined? So we look at the last 25 years of weather data to understand what is the frequency and the intensity of droughts and floods, or can also be extreme temperatures, winds. So we look at the probability of these events to happen, and that gives us the kind of the cost of insurance. And then in order to personalize the premium for every person, we take into account the location and the size of the field, and then obviously also the crop, because the products are different depending on the crop. So this is how we determine the premium, especially for your field, based on the data that we collect from you, like your location, your field size, and your crop type, and the data that we collected from the historical data we provided from satellite providers.
Okay, I'm going to come back to some of my questions quickly, Simon, and then we're almost ready to move on and to include the other panelists again. So I just wanted to know, at the moment, you're only covering weather-related risk. Are you looking at developing other products that can cover other types of risks as well for small-scale farmers, such as theft?
Theft, that wouldn't be included. We can insure risks that are observable remotely. So we're looking into pests and disease, because if we can see the field, for example, if we're talking, let's say, tobacco, the leaves are very important. If we see that the leaves have turned from green to yellow at the time when it was supposed to be green, then we can identify this through satellite pictures, and we can possibly compensate farmers and cover this risk. But theft would be much more difficult. It comes after harvest. So that's not something that we would be able to cover. We can do fire, even if it's criminal fire. We could possibly identify this with satellite data. But post-harvest, that's a lot more complicated. So I wouldn't be able to promise anything there.
And at what point do you consider the crop to be post-harvest? For example, if it's a crop that's been harvested and left on the field to dry, like beans, for example, is the crop covered until it's taken off of the field, or as soon as it's been harvested?
No, that could be if we know that the beans are indeed dried outdoor on sun, then, and that they need a very dry weather at that time. That's something that we can take into account. We can have a post-harvest phase in our product, where we cover in case of extreme humidity or unplanned rain. So that's something we can do.
Okay, and then just a last question from me for now. What are the limitations that you have run into in terms of rolling this out further and in more countries, or for more farmers in those areas, in those countries where you are already operational?
So sorry, in new markets or in?
Well, in new and existing markets, what has been some of the limitations and challenges you faced?
Okay, so I mentioned one already, which is regulation. So we need to make sure that the regulation allows this kind of product. So it's in most countries it's allowed. I think in South Africa it's going to be clarified soon, but that's one point. The second thing is we need to find a payment mechanism that works well with smallholder farmers. So if mobile money is very much used in the market, then that's ideal. But if not, we need to find maybe an app that is used by farmers, or another payment mechanisms, maybe vouchers, that could work. After that, I think that's about it, because we have a reinsurance partner that can put us in touch with local insurance companies. So finding an insurance partner shouldn't be too difficult. So as soon as we have payment mechanisms that the legislation is favorable to that, then we can launch with not too much difficulties. It takes some time because we need to register locally and obtain an insurance distribution license. But if we decide to launch, then something like 6 to 9 months later, we can be operational.
So I'd asked my last question, and I've actually got one more, and that's just in terms of the minimum requirements that you expect of farmers who participate and who use this product. Do you expect the farmers to, like, for example, do they have to be in contact with local extension officers where they're farming to make sure they're using specific best practices on their fields, or is there no requirement like that?
There are no such requirements. We send, for farmers who are on WhatsApp, for example, we send videos to give them best practice, so we help them with added information. But there's no specific requirements for best practice. But the farmers need to understand that if they lose production because of ill practices, of wrongdoings, then it's still not going to be covered because we only cover external risks. So if you use the wrong products on your field, then it's something that is very personal. It's not due to the weather or something that happened in your area. So it's not going to be covered by our insurance.
Okay, thanks. So I just want to invite Adam and Iran to join us again, and we can just have a bit of a more general discussion and see if there's any follow-up questions from the audience, and then we can start wrapping up. So I'm just quickly... Okay. Oh, sorry. Here we go. So one of the general questions that I had from the panel was just in the market research that you've done as a company before introducing these products and solutions to smallholder farmers on the continent, what were some of the greatest realizations that you had generally about the state of farming in Africa? If we can start with you, Adam.
Yeah, sure. That's a good good question. I think I mean, this actually came out of a very personal story in during my academic fieldwork for my PhD. We were looking at ways of, you know, combining water sources in rural areas with agricultural production for better economic outcomes for communities. And so we had done some drip irrigation. So I'm very familiar with the challenges associated with that Iran is solving. And then we had all this fresh produce in a pretty rural area of Zambia, and then realized that marketing is very difficult. And so I think, you know, it's not, you can't really, one thing that I think I learned through that whole process was just that everything is connected. And when you don't have a good market, for example, you're not going to be able to invest as much into the farm as you would want, because there's a risk. And if you don't have insurance and something can go wrong, then you're going to be much less, you know, risk taking. And you know, the common denominator a lot of times is just going back to the staple crop. And, you know, I've met farmers who tried tomatoes or tried to get out and do higher value production, and it worked for a year or two, and then something drastic happened and they're back to where they were before. And so there's, yeah, it's not as, there's nothing, so there's not going to be one silver bullet solution for all of these challenges, but I do see that how they're all actually connected.
Okay. I'm going to move on to you, Iran. So just from your experience on the continent, what has been your greatest realizations about the state of farming in Africa, especially in the small-scale farming sector?
Thanks. So what we saw when we started to get into the details, that if you're talking about large farms, usually they will have energy solutions that will be able to fuel the drip systems or any other irrigation system. But for the smallholder, the solutions were one of two. One is very, very short, limited drip solution up to 15 or 20 meters based on some kind of water tower of 2.5 meters height that you need to somehow bring the water to the tower, or a very expensive pump. No one had, or we didn't find a solution that is really gravity-based that can take you to the field and grow a proper field of 100 meter, 150 meter. And this is exactly why we created this product, especially for the smallholder community in Africa.
And then over to you, Simon. So yeah, just the same question. If you also want to respond to that, just your general impressions of the state of the sector.
So one thing that surprised me a lot is the fact that there is a lot more potential than what's currently effective. Meaning, farmers often have a lot more land that they could work on. They could produce a lot more if they could have access to better seeds, to better fertilizers. But all of this is locked by the fact that they don't have access to financing. They cannot even themselves invest so much in their activity because they need to diversify in order to reduce their risk. So yeah, that's, I was surprised by how much potential there is that could be unlocked. The second thing I would say is, when I went to talk with farmers, I was surprised to see that a lot of them were exposed already to a lot of programs or innovations or new practices. So there is this misconception that farmers don't need to be educated, they need to know more. Often they just were victims of frauds or scams before. There is a very low trust in new solutions. So it's not so much that the information didn't get to them, it's more that things were not followed up properly or that they were disappointed. So that's actually a big barrier that we face that we didn't expect to face. I don't know if that's common to all places in Africa, but at least in markets where we are, that's what we see.
Mm. And so I think, probably one of the last questions that I'll pose to you as we start to wrap up, in the latest OECD and FAO 10-year agricultural outlook, there's not a very positive outlook for Africa, and it's predicted that sub-Saharan Africa will become even less self-sufficient in terms of food production. But from what you've seen out on the field and in these countries, do you think is there an alternative future possible within the next 10 years? Can you realistically see that sort of the past trends can be reversed? And do you feel like is there real urgency to really farm more efficiently and productively in Africa? And yeah, let's start with you again, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic. I think I don't think it will be, I don't think it will be a simple transition to reverse some of those trends. But I think one of the things we've seen with, for example, the last 6 months with COVID in agricultural value chains, I think across the continent, is people shifting to new behaviors because they have to. And one of those new behaviors has been going digital, right? So, more use of digital platforms that were kind of unknown before. Farmers are not going out as much to the agro dealers, but they are online. So I think that's one, example of, a positive trend that I think can actually help address some of the challenges, the trends that are discouraging. And we live in an information age, and Africa as a continent is probably the furthest behind in terms of internet connectivity and access to information, right? But I think that just means it's inevitable. The internet will come and people will be much more connected. And once they're more connected, I think there's so many more options of making things more efficient.
Thanks. Simon, and are you more optimistic than the OECD and the UN?
I'm a bit like Adam. I'm quite optimistic by nature, but I can see that, for example, in Mali, we see that the productivity of the fields have been increasing lately due to new seeds being used, like non-traditional seeds, hybrid seeds. We also see that, so that's really a good trend. We see that they are producing more and more. But we can also see is that governments are starting to see that there is a card to play in agriculture. Before that, they were all looking at industrialization. They really wanted to industrialize but I think they're starting to realize that there is an emergency in terms of food globally, and that Africa has a role to play in feeding the world. So there is I think there is a shift in mentality from a lot of African governments to now help and modernize agriculture instead of only thinking about tourism or industrialization, because there is more value to be done there, and it employs so much more people that it has a huge impact as well.
Thanks. And then lastly, over to you, Eran. So I think, the type of technology that you've got available, because I know there is still a rather small uptake of irrigation in many sub-Saharan African countries. So, I mean, surely if we can get products like this and make that more available, maybe even being subsidized by government, that can have a massive impact on how productive small-scale farmers can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent enough years in my career working for public and international organizations to know that usually they are the last to identify what's happening. And I think that today we are in the middle of really a revolution, a technology revolution in agriculture that will impact everybody. Technologies like N-drip that basically change the way of irrigation, and the technologies that change the way that agriculture is financed will change agriculture everywhere, and it will be the same in Africa. I'm extremely optimistic, not only optimistic.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Simon, Adam, and Eran, for your presentations. I think all of the products that you presented hold amazing opportunity for the small-scale farming sector in Africa, where it's most needed. And again, Charmaine and Amit, thank you for allowing me to moderate the conversation. I enjoyed it very much. And Charmaine, you will give some more information on any of the audience members who still had more questions that they want to discuss with the presenters, how to get in contact with them.
Yes, I'd just like to hand over to Moti Patriano from the Israel Export Institute, just to give a few words and explain what the Export Institute, how they collaborate with us. Moti?
Yes, thank you, Charmaine, and thank you all of you for joining us today. Thank you, Deneen, and the companies for a very interesting session. So my name is Moti Patriano. I'm the manager of the agro-technology sector at the Israel Export Institute. We're a non-profit organization dedicated to help Israeli companies with business opportunity worldwide. So today you met just the tip of the iceberg of the Israeli agri-tech. We have almost 500 Israeli agro-technology companies, and I encourage you to use our services through our partners from the Ministry of Economy, Mr. Amit Lev and Ms. Charmaine Orchevitz, to explore the most innovative solution that the startup nation has to offer. So I hope today is just the beginning of a further relationship. So thank you all, and I hope to see you again very, very soon.
Thank you, Moti. We will be sending a recording of the webinar, as well as we will be connecting the companies the participants that requested to be connected with specific companies today. So, and watch the web for further seminars and panel discussions. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Deneen, and thank you for this. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Cheers.